I'm glad you feel that way.
Yeah.
So what was your takeaway from
I think that this gives us an opportunity to have these hard conversations. I appreciate
about race?
about race.
Yeah.
I think that when we start talking about it and we deal with the root of it, we can get past it and we can win races in 2018. And I think us having this event today, it just opens the door to, we had great dialogue, people with, ideas and perspectives, and everybody has an experience around race.
Yeah.
And that's where you were trying to go.
Yeah, and I really like that idea of starting out with individual stories and dissecting the stories and asking what you could do differently if you found yourself in a story of a racial encounter. How could you change the ending of that story so that you were actually being in right relationship or in solidarity with a person, or people of color? When you're a European American person, how can you stop thinking and acting white and start thinking and acting like a human being, like a person in the working class, like somebody who doesn't want to have power over anyone else, wants to have power with them. That's in solidarity, and I think that's immensely liberating for folks. Because they realize that having power over somebody is actually powerlessness.
Yes.
Because the only people that give you power over anybody else are the big rich folks upstairs, and they can take that away from you anytime. So the sense that European Americans have of feeling powerless and helpless, and voting for Trump for that reason, for example, is just, it's all thinking and acting white. If they thought and acted in right relationship with people of color, with African Americans and other people of color, they wouldn't have that sense, of power. They would have a sense of solidarity. So I think the stories are the way in for a lot of people, including people who are really pretty sophisticated. European Americans who are pretty sophisticated about race, because they still see only benefits of white privilege. They don't see the costs. The costs are hidden to them because they think and act white.
And it costs all of us. It doesn't just cost
exactly.
them. It costs all of us. And look, and when you think about these elections and these races, as long as we're divided and we have this, we're going to continue to lose, particularly as Democrats. We're going to continue to lose.
Absolutely.
We have to build bridges. We have to build like you say, solidarity in all our communities.
Right.
African American, Asian, Latino. We have to start making sure that we are reaching everybody with a message that's inclusive. Democrats have been, like they say, they've been chasing these moderate white voters for all these years, and these people are Republicans. They're gone. We will never get them back. But you have communities with voices that aren't being heard.
And I think among them are the folks who are the victims of the opioid crisis. These working class whites who feel so helpless and so angry and for the most part don't vote. They didn't vote for Trump because, like many other poor and working class people, they can't get to the polls. Even if they wanted to, even if they thought they could make a difference, they got to work on a Tuesday. Why do we have elections on a weekday? No other democracy does this to its voters, and it isn't just black people whose vote is being suppressed. It's poor whites, because that's the way that they don't have to. They can ignore.
It's power.
They can ignore both poor whites and poor blacks because they won't get together with each other. So upper middle class and elites are the only ones who really decide. The power structure, decide the political power structure, and that's deep historic roots in the South. I always talk about this thing about the poll tax. People think the poll tax under Jim Crow was to exclude black people, but in fact, black people were already excluded by the white primary. They didn't need a poll tax to prevent black people from voting. What they needed the poll tax for was to prevent poor whites from voting. You see, so you had to pay a poll tax, and the local what do you call it, election board, board of elections, is run by the upper middle class and the elites. They decide who is exempt from the poll tax, you see.
Mm-hmm.
And so Jim Crow was not simply a way of disenfranchising black people, it was also a way of disenfranchising working people as a whole.
So the answer to our problems is solidarity, is
Yes,
figuring out, that we have to get, race is a construct. It's not even real. Talk about that.
Yeah, well, it's not just a social construct. It's a social control construct in which separate and unequal is the basis for Jim Crow, for white supremacy. And as long as white people think that they're getting a benefit, see, that becomes the basis for them to never want to act in solidarity. So every time that liberal and progressive whites reiterate that perspective that white privilege is a benefit, they don't realize that there's a difference between a privilege and a benefit, and they're actually reinforcing the message, of the ruling elites. Ruling elites don't care whether you oppose it or not, just as long as you're reinforcing their message. Yeah, you're getting something out of this. You poor whites, you're getting something out of this.
And as long as we stay divided, they're going to win.
Yeah, and as long as we are separate and unequal, it is almost impossible for black people to trust, working class whites, because they always throw you under the bus. They always make that choice. And
because they assume that the privileges or their opportunity is on the other side, versus saying,
right.
You know what, if I stay in solidarity,
if I stick together. Now, I mean, it's true that one of the things that happens is you start getting treated like a black person, which
once you go black, you can't go back.
which is difficult. It's much more difficult than you've been used to, right? If you're European American, but it's real, I think that European Americans are so used to living in an artificiality, of friendships, relationships, that don't really test you, that it's very hard when things get real, to they talk about white it is. People in my own family, but you have to ask yourself, I mean, are those relationships that cannot stand the test of you having a black friend, how real are they? How much do those people love you, and how much do those people make their love conditional upon you not crossing the color line?
Yes.
I mean, that's heavy.
That's heavy. And these are the kind of conversations that we've had around our coffee and conversation. I mean, we're getting real. I mean, we talked about Netroots, and I wanted to make a statement in that regard, that Stacey Evans was not protested because she was white, but because she was white, she was protested. And in that instance, it was an opportunity for people in communities of color, or whatever the message was that they were trying to relay. At that moment, it was an opportunity. I mean, it was heard in a way that it would have never been heard if they hadn't done it in that moment that they done it. And that's who Netroots is. I mean, they're a progressive organization, and
they're disruptive.
They're disruptive, and it's not going to feel good. And in those areas where people were offended, those are areas, if you were offended, those are areas that maybe you need to kind of do a little bit of self-reflection. Like, why am I offended by this? But and don't be so distracted by the behavior and the disruption. Look beyond that and say, what is the message? What are they really trying to say? Yeah,
and part of that is the whole comfort zone issue, and if you're, it's almost like there's almost a counterintuitive rule for European Americans to stop thinking and acting white, and that is to say, if you're comfortable, you must be thinking and acting white. You got to get outside your comfort zone. in order to be doing something, that is changing. And you know what else, what the hidden benefit of that is, and the hidden cost of not doing that, is you live an unexamined life, and what is Socrates said, an unexamined life is not worth living.
That's good.
Yeah, so it really is, in order to examine your life, you need to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Every bit of learning is about a discomfort, and particularly when you're unlearning, because that is a crucial.
And that's hard for a lot. That's hard for all of us. That's hard.
Everybody it's hard to unlearn, but that's where your brain plasticity comes in. That's where your mind is working outside of the ruts of habit, right? And that's how I think of thinking and acting white. It's a bunch of bad habits, that European Americans have been inculcated with. They're powerful, but they're not, it's easier to break them than it is smoking. Smoking is a chemical dependency, I mean, this is just your mind. And so every time Trump and Trump-like folks talk about political correctness and dismiss it, and all that, political correctness is bad on one level. On another level, it's examining the words that you use. It's thinking of yourself outside of yourself, right? So that whenever you become uncomfortable, like those folks today were talking about how they were getting yelled at the Netroots conference, you have to think about, instead of just thinking inside yourself, you have to think outside yourself and say,
Absolutely.
This is how I'm feeling. Why am I feeling this way? Why am I feeling that I'm being attacked, right? And maybe I'm not being attacked. Maybe this is in other words, to be more objective about yourself. That's a sign of maturity. It's the process of maturity to say, how do other people see me, right? So you're growing up. You're not being attacked. You're growing up.
Yeah, and it becomes an opportunity for you to see their perspective. Like, what is it that they're feeling? Who are these people? Like I say, that whole thing was, it needed to happen, and that's what Netroots. That's how they operate. I mean, they go to a city. They had
a big demonstration. They walked down on Peachtree. 500,000 people.
I don't know if they had 500,000.
Oh well, they were pretty disruptive, though.
Oh yeah, they were disruptive, and that's what protests are designed to do. They're designed to make you take your thinking to another level.
And so and I really think that the understanding of that there really is an invisible cost to thinking and acting white, to maintaining, to not trying to get out of your privilege, that there are hidden costs to that that you don't see because you're white blind, because you're immersed in it, and that there are benefits on the other side of self-awareness, of connecting with people on a much realer level than you ever did before, of being tested and challenged in those relationships, and of reaching a higher level of humanity.
Yes. Because that's what we're all just human. We're just human. That's all we are.
Right.
It's not about color. It's just we're just human. So thank you, David.
Thanks.
I totally appreciate you facilitating this today, and I'm looking to do this again. I think in the new year, I think we should definitely have another, some sort of conversation. We're going to be talking about the issues. A lot of great events going on here at our facility. We do have a campaign office, so a lot of great events going on. We have a Family Fun Night coming up. Is it next week, I believe? Yes, next week. Family Fun Night, y'all. I think we all need a break. Let's bring our families, our kids, our friends, adults. We'll have some adult beverages for you. Kids, we'll have a lot of great board games. We'll have some music. We'll have some fun. I think we just kind of need a break from it all. So Family Fun Night, guys. Look for the Facebook post, because I'll be posting everywhere, and look for the invites for those of you that are on my email. Here's our signs. Tamara Johnson Shealy, Georgia State Senate District 40. We're off and running, guys. The campaign office is open, and we're needing volunteers to come in. It's Monday through Thursday 5 p.m. to about 8:30, 9 o'clock. We're going to stop calling around 8:30, but we'll kind of hang out a little bit. So those of you that can come by the office, it's 2408 Mount Vernon Road. It's here in Dunwoody. 5 p.m. to 8:30, Monday through Thursday, and from Saturdays, on Saturdays from about 10 to 4. So come out, be a part of the campaign, make a contribution. My website, it's www.tamara4, F-O-R, and Georgia spelled out.com. So be a part of this. We have a race to win. Fran Miller has to go. We need to get real serious about getting him out of there. 2018 is definitely my year. I'm looking forward to it. And again, David, I want to say thank you for being a voice to this and helping me to articulate my messaging and to communicate with my constituents in this regard. We're all human, and I'm just glad to have you as a part of my team.
And I'm glad to be here.
Thank you.
Glad to be working with you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.